True Culture on Human Nature TV, back with the tap in. Today we have the pleasure of tapping in with one of the most intelligent, approachable, light-filled human beings I've met. This sister is carrying out selfless, life-changing, good deeds in Ward 8, which also happens to be the ward she grew up in. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm so honored to have her here with us today, Nick. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies, it's my honor to introduce at-large committee member Sharece Crawford.
Hey. Thank you.
Please let's give a warm True Culture welcome to Miss Sharece.
Thank you guys so much for having me on Human Nature TV. I'm excited. This is a really great opportunity to kind of make some connections between our humanity that we need, the most of, and, valuing our identity. I think a lot of times in this country, in this city, we have identity struggles because everybody's trying to find their own and then struggling and competing with other people in their identity. And so Human Nature, I think, is definitely a great look.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Now, I know you have a very personal perspective on Ward 8 DC. Now, for the people who aren't from the DMV or aren't from DC, for the sake of them, I want you to, how do you describe Ward 8? How do you describe the city and the community that you grew up in?
Thank you for asking a question about describing DC. I think, I recently learned that the term ghetto came from Jewish encampments during the Holocaust.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at what happened during the Holocaust, some may be familiar with it and some may not, but it was just an encampment of really where people went ultimately to die.
Yeah.
And so you look at what they called red line communities.
Right.
That's happening all across the U.S. Mm-hmm. My community in Ward 8 so happened to be one of those communities where poor Black people were sentenced to almost to take care of each other almost. They put the poorest health facilities there, the poorest education facilities there. They put poor nutritional resources and a lack of grocery stores, which we're still to this day fighting in the food desert. The last song you just heard, "Stop Buying It," is a protest to the lack of healthy food options in our communities. Right. It's a protest to oversaturated media advertisement, putting sugar in our diets and in our school lunches, and at our front door accessible. And so I hope that gives some perspective that my community, my hood or my ghetto that I grew up in is similar to the effect of Black communities around the country. And so specifically where I grew up is in Congress Park. It's a sub-community in Congress Heights. And one of the projects I'm working on right now is from the hood to politics. I'm sorry, the name of it is slipping my mind right now. Policies of politics. I'm gonna make sure I get the correct.
Yeah, that's
it's
fine.
all good
But it's basically given the outline of how policy impacts red line communities and how systemic decisions have paved the way to the lack thereof.
Right. How
drugs and guns were systemically put into poor Black communities, red line communities, to think that, okay, well, what do you do if you're uneducated, if you're malnutritioned in these type of conditions? And you now have access to massive drugs and unmarked weapons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, as a little Black girl from Congress Park, how did you end up in policy? How did you end up in politics? Like, how did you make your journey to where you are right now? Because when you think about Ward 8, that's not the normal path or the typical traditional path that's expected specifically for a Black female.
The grace of God, no.
I was thinking that.
No, We all get our passion from somewhere where you tap into something.
It started with, it was just God's plan, because it was never a time where I thought politics was
your thing.
I didn't even realize that politics, how much of politics played in my life. Even with I was talking with friends the other day about government cheese. My friends had never used or eaten government cheese before. I was talking to my friends about food stamps. They had never seen an actual book of food stamps.
Yeah.
And
specific.
And that just, and it forced me to now educate my friends, therefore, to say, hey, let me show you what food stamps looks like. And then when I look at the food stamp, it had Department of Agriculture on it.
Did it?
I was this year old when I realized that the Department of Agriculture and Lyndon B. Johnson was responsible for putting food stamps in poor Black communities.
Wow. Oh yeah, definitely Lyndon B. Johnson was responsible.
I knew that, but not like
they were upset. The Southern Democrats was upset.
But it was tradition. It was actually initially started with not poor people, but poor people that were not Black, of African descent. And so eventually they realized that that the Agriculture Department could not continue to discriminate laws that prohibited Black people from receiving the same
access to.
But of course, we were receiving less than our white counterparts or our other ethnicities around the country. But these kinds of conversations forced me to realize how much I am a product of this system. And so it wasn't until, because I studied communications. I mean, this is what I really wanted to do, because it allowed me an opportunity to tell a different story. Right. Whereas every other day the media reported on somebody getting shot, stabbed, robbed, which were all very much so, which was a real threat. But it wasn't talking about stories like my mom, who were the caregivers of our communities, making sure people ate, and bringing complete strangers into our home that were victims of domestic violence, and they were living on our couch. They weren't telling those stories. My mom has been a caregiver her whole life, and so I told her I'm her on steroids, maybe to the 10th power.
Shout out to mom. Shout out, mom. Mama Crawford.
Mama Crawford. The other day she told me she was going to put herself first. And I felt like I was going to hit the floor.
That's beautiful. That's
finally beautiful. Right after I don't know how many years, but that's how we are as Black women. We take care of everybody around us. Yep.
I was so proud of my mom. I had the proudest daughter moment because once I realized the curse of her being forced to have to be a caregiver, that she didn't have that. For many Black people in Black communities, it wasn't a choice.
Right.
She was the youngest of 7, taking care of all her siblings.
Wow.
Then taking care of everyone in our communities. And so these reasons are reasons why I fight for racial justice, why I fight for Black reparations and restorative justice, why it is not, it is not questionable if we are deserving or if we're lazy or any of those other stigmas attached to the conversation. It is a mandate. It is a debt that is owed. And it must be brought, the conversation must be had.
Yeah.
We've not held this government accountable for the injustices that they've enforced upon us. And now is that time.
Yeah.
That's the part of Bernie that I did not agree with and I didn't respect at all. And it's the part of Elizabeth Warren that I do respect. It's the discussion of reparations. We have to have that because we have to get to the point where we actually receive reparations.
And
I have to acknowledge
Bernie was the person. I mean, because let's be honest, both of these top candidates were leveraging Black political leaders.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's be honest.
I mean, come on, Obama's Joe's cool Black friend.
Obama, Joe, and then Joe, and then Bernie, Dr. MLK.
Right, right.
Bernie was the person that had the greatest leverage in regards to the injustices in this country and us being dealt a bad check, because those words were specifically said by Dr. King.
Right.
Dr. King was very specific about why he was coming to Washington to collect his check.
Right.
So Bernie, were you an ally in that movement, or were you just really in the movement? So now I question what was happening really in the movement.
I think Bernie's caught up with being a bit extreme on certain levels, and
that's what we saw in the last debate.
Yeah, it's his downfall. It's going to be his downfall.
And that's the part that I was challenged with most, because I felt like Bernie would have been, starting this whole candidacy, I had a conversation directly with Bernie Sanders that he shut down about reparations. And that conversation was recorded and it ended up going viral. But I was more shocked about the response. You know, people were excited about the hysteria, and I was a little depressed.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I never even shared the video because I was still in disbelief.
Yeah.
You know, and so I ended up putting it. I mean, I didn't share it on Instagram. I put it on my Twitter, but I was in disbelief that this is a man that would leverage his relationship with Dr. King, but could not stand firm. That was a part of this history's racial injustice.
Right.
That was directly exposed to the worst parts, some of the worst parts of this country, but yet could not speak directly to Black voters.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That disconnect definitely, I think, also is playing a role in the Black vote, in which way people are starting to kind of sway, you know, now that it's gotten pretty much down to just him and Biden.
But what we have to do, like I said, that those of us that are determined to get free or die trying, those of us that are committed to this movement, we have to be united on a front of pushing the agenda, because we didn't push the agenda with Obama. I was not fully aware and educated as I am today. So I hold myself accountable today for knowing better. And now that we know better, we must do better.
Agreed. We have to. It takes us. I was kind of upset with Obama for a while to see what he did for Black people when he got in office. He really didn't do anything for us. But then I can only be upset with us because we did not push that.
And who was supposed to, though? And you think about that part. How long we've been fighting in this country. Like, I look at people like my mom. We've never had a conversation about reparations.
Yeah.
My mom, who slaved the most in our community, who was a third generation free American, her mother's grandmother was born a slave and escaped to freedom, so that she was not going to raise another person in slavery and bondage. And so these are the generations of my family that I believe that there are people like me who are called to do our research and then called to speak up on behalf of those who no longer have a voice. Because my mom was tired.
Yeah.
And that was the generation that really could have been the one to hold Obama accountable.
Right.
But think about, you know, after the Dr. King generation, what they did with Dr. King in this assassination, which is coming up for 4/20 this year. They assassinated Dr. King, who was a voice on this issue. And that happens in our history, where you find the most vocal person on Black issues, and you assassinate them publicly, and it instills fear in all the other Black people, so they become silent on issues that matter.
Agreed.
And what you'll find is that after Dr. King, there were some generations and still some protests and still movements, but there were not people willing to put themselves on the line to face the kind of consequences that comes along with being a vocal Black person in this country.
Right. No, I totally agree. I mean, even just kind of listening to you right now, I'm thinking of the few, you know, that have attempted, but something somewhere happened to where they decided to kind of take a step back. Like, even when I think about Jesse Jackson, you know, at one point he attempted to run for president. And it's like, even backing down from that, or some of the other Black leaders, it's almost as if to take on that role, it's not really a burden, but it's more so, is it too much of a challenge? Is it too much of a hassle? And it's like, I don't know. For me personally, I don't really feel like I have seen a Black leader since I have been in existence, and I'm 32. Well, and that's just me.
It costs money to be honest with you. What I'm doing out of my own pockets, it costs money to start a movement and to run a movement. It costs money to organize. It costs money to be able to be present and risk your career and financial freedom to speak on important issues. And so this is how I know that there are people who are assigned to these conversations to move the needle forward. You know, I'm not looking to be the lifetime person on this matter. I'm looking to empower the next generation as soon as possible, so that there's other voices willing to speak up. And I think we have a generation behind us that is a very courageous generation that believes that their voices have been shut out of the conversation. And I'm here to let them know too that we need you at the table.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact,
for sure,
bring your own table, bring your own folding chairs, and you let us know what you believe should be happening with your future.
Well, the younger generation is so done with this government, they're ready to throw the whole government out. Just throw the whole government out. But we can't be extremists. We can't take it to that extreme.
I oftentimes have those thoughts too, so I cannot.
Me understand. Too, and I have to come back. I have to bring it back.
But you look at the polls, even when it comes to the primaries that we just had, they were absent in their voting.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, because they're done with it. They're done with this process. It's like electoral college is going to do what they want to do anyway. But really, we can't think like that.
We can't.
We have to exercise. And I ain't gonna lie, I kind of got caught up in that back in 2012. But we have to. People fought and died for the right to vote, and without us being politically involved, we don't have a chance to exercise our voices aren't heard, and we don't have the chance to exercise our vote, and our votes do matter.
The Selma 55, what was March 1st, that happened this month. It was 55 years since people died on that bridge in Selma in order to establish the Voting Rights Act. And so knowing our history and where we've come from and consistently reminding ourselves of that, right? Because a lot of times they'll say, oh, that's in the past. But no, the past is very relevant to the present and the future.
Yeah, because it keeps happening. The cycles going to keep happening unless we stop it.
Yeah.
We're just getting rid of laws this year in this Congress, in this Senate, that banished
lynching. Lynching.
Yeah.
I mean,
how did that just become illegal?
And then it's the Emmett Till Act. Do you know how long ago Emmett Till was killed?
And that's why we must be involved in this process to pick up the baton where those before us left off.
Yes, because they need a break. When I met Angela Davis, the second or third thing I asked her, because I was super excited. So of course, it's a few things I said to her first, but I asked her, like, what do you need from me? What do you need from us? Because you deserve this break. You deserve to just go from here and there and speak, and that's it. We don't need to see your generation out here boots to the ground anymore. You deserve a break, and that's what we need to do. We need to actually step up and be involved.
And we are, as much as we're stepping up and being involved, we're looking at the older generation to not continue to silence us, to tell us to sit down. And
that's a good point, Sharece.
Stay in our lane.
That is definitely another part of it.
I've spoken with several career politicians about their succession plan, and what's heartbreaking is many of them do not have one.
Right. They're not thinking about passing the torch. You got to think about passing the torch.
I, for one, I want to die on an island. I might catch a plane during COVID-19.
Perfect
I don't
death,
know.
huh?
but the point of it is that I don't want to be, that's why I don't consider myself a politician. I definitely am a human rights activist and advocate, about Black liberation 100%, personal liberation. I think that I will take time out to invest in myself and level myself and nurture myself, because sometimes I need a little bit more energy or more time with me to come out, to show up, to do series of interviews like this and talk about the things that matter, and looking for the people who care.
Yeah.
Right.
Self-care is definitely essential. No matter what you do or where you are in life, it is definitely essential. And a lot of us neglect self, So honestly, even just to hear you not just identifying not as a politician, but knowing and being able to acknowledge that there is something even greater beyond this. Like, this is just one part of the mission. Yeah. This is just one part of the calling. But still finding that balance,
Yeah. My thing is this: take as much time as you need to to heal yourself. Yes. Take as much time as you need until you believe that you are, because again, don't mute my health. Looking at the sugary drink tax, looking at, what are we putting in our bodies? What's going into our stores? Those are the reasons why I support policies like those, because how are we continuing to neglect our health in this country for so many generations, right? So don't mute my health is important for the reasons of the diabetes in our communities. We're working on a program called Your Brain on Sugar. It's going to be more of like a PSA type of thing, and moving people to be engaged in the sugary beverage and in the Healthy Beverage Act, which allows us to take funding from this policy and put it back into our communities.
We desperately need that.
We desperately need that, because what's going to happen is that if the beverage industry decides they're going to go up on a price, we don't get to override it. They're going to increase the price themselves, and then we'll still have to pay those premiums.
Right.
Whereas we say, obviously, stop buying it, which was the song of the day.
Right.
But if those people are going to come into our city, tourists are going to come into our city to buy these products, we need to be able to leverage those dollars and put them back into communities that are most impacted.
I don't think anybody should be eating and drinking this crap, though.
It is
America as a whole. There are other countries who would never allow our food to be in their country. So it's like all of these processed foods that they know aren't healthy for us. Why are they even making this accessible to U.S. citizens? They're trying to kill us.
Well, capitalism is a part of this country. I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I did it on We Are I podcast. 400 years, the slave trade started from the sugar trade.
The
sugar trade was the first commodity outside of cotton. It was sugar
and hemp too. We can't forget about hemp.
That came later, but the very first commodity was sugar. And so sugar has now expanded and multiplied and is now a leading cause of death in all of our diets. And so you're right. Other countries would not stand for this, but it is oversaturated in our diets, and we must speak up about it because it also coincides with other pre-existing conditions that you'll see today where people are suspected or liable to have access to the COVID-19.
Well, the natural, the processed, the synthetic sugar is what we're dealing with too, the bleached sugar. And if we would just have the pure sugar cane that we had back in the day, it wouldn't be as bad as it is now.
It's the overconsumption and the oversaturation of it. So
yes.
It's like you look at
and it's easier to access.
Everything in moderation.
It's in everything. And what's also problematic about the beverage industry is that they are not even properly labeling the product. Right. So you don't even really know how much oversaturated the sugar product is until you've consumed it. And it's a cause for children being on what they call Ritalin, them not being able to focus in the classroom. Yeah. So children's brain on sugar based on this oversaturated sugar diet is being impacted. I want to believe that if you look at the last 10 homicides and you were able to test their brain and test their diet and their food intake, that their brains were on sugar. They had overconsumed themselves with a sugar-based diet. And so we're trying to encourage a plant-based diet, looking at building gardens in our communities, looking at encouraging healthier food, like we heard in the candidate, don't stop buying it, putting fresher products, produce in our grocers. So the food justice fight continues for our overall health while we combat this national crisis of COVID-19. And so that's, for me, a part of our Black agenda dates back to our health and the generations of health disparities that we've experienced outside of the every 2 to 4 year virus and things of that nature. This is an ongoing process in our communities, an ongoing threat. Life or death matter.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but policy plays a big role in why food deserts exist, just as far as how they classify certain establishments as a grocery store. Yeah. If you sell a loaf of bread or at least a banana or something of, along the line of produce, you're now deemed a grocery store, even though you're really a corner store. Yeah. And convenience in a neighborhood, which is why there's so many, grocery stores that's far and few in between. Specifically, I've lived in Ward 8 at one point in my life, and that was one of the biggest struggles especially when you don't have a vehicle.
And imagine, like we've been giving rides to grocery stores. Organizations like Martha's Table has been an ally, DC Greens, the Green Scheme, just a lot of partners that try to create opportunities to get food to the front door of families that do not have the resources.
Right. Why don't we have farmers markets? Do we have
the Black Farmers Market is trying to get started. There are farmers market in different remote locations. Martha's Table does play a large role in some of them in the schools. And there are farmers markets, but people still need to be able to access them.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I work in Ward 3, one of the more affluent wards, and I mean, literally Saturday and Sunday, they're all over the place.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, way uptown compared to other parts of the city where, like you said, you actually have to find a partnership or even try to find a resource to even make that something that can come about, for people to even have access. I mean, and sometimes even with the larger chains, you can go from Ward 1 to Ward 8 and it still be a giant, but they're carrying different quality.
I've noticed that too.
of food.
Don't get me into the quality of the food. I mean, not only is it the poor quality in our groceries,
pricing.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Why am I paying more to eat less quality food?
Eat less quality.
You know, that's what they do to us, though.
The same grape, or worse grape, actually, in my grocery store. And when I go across the bridge, it's a better quality grape that's less expensive.
Right.
That's my problem with the mayor and
systemic.
with a few other representatives that we have. It's like, what are you doing now?
It's systemic, and honest to be very honest, that this has been going on for so many generations that, and I'm not giving out any passes to anyone, that I don't know if they fully grasp how to respond to this magnitude of a problem. And I cannot think of anything. I mean, when you look at something deeply rooted in the laws in this country, laws that pre-existed, there's so many outdated laws that are still on the books, even with our voting rights, that still have to be renewed.
Right.
That's the beauty of a democracy, though. We can do just like they did when they did Reconstruction. they did Reconstruction. We need to do Reconstruction.
What's happening right now with forcing everyone to sit down and
it's definitely something deeper happening than just
new currency
us being in
and
the
that
house.
sorts of things. So
and I mean,
we'll see.
It's definitely different for residents in the district too, as well, and where our seat is, and Congress and the Senate as well. Like our voice and just how
that's the question of
they keep us out.
So
they keep us out of that, because if you're not in a room, you can't have an effect. You won't have any say so in that conversation. That's why we're bringing folding chairs. If you can't eat if you don't have a seat at the table.
We're bringing our own folded tables. We're bringing our own folded chairs.
Portable.
And if we need to camp outside, then that's what has to happen. But again, those things require funding and resources. And so, we've just been very fortunate to find opportunities within the matrix of it all to fund these types of initiatives, because another problem with fighting for Black reparations and Black issues is that there's not enough funding in the pool to continue those efforts.
They have the money, though. They just don't want to
it just doesn't go
allocate those funds in the direction of our community.
And and this is why we must persist with applying pressure.
It's terrible how much money they give us to invest in the grocery stores and invest in education, and they're giving out billions of dollars
to education. I mean, we were talking online about financial literacy in Black communities. I was 25 years old before I had an understanding of basic financial literacy, a real understanding of debt to income ratio, a real understanding of interest on loans, student loans, and I got those at 18. So it's criminal how far behind we are in Black communities when it comes to the basic mathematics of this country.
I think there's another side to that too, though. I feel like we have to be accountable for us investing in and taking care of our own children.
But it also starts with somebody being aware, information.
Right. And now that we're aware, like our parents,
I'm a first generation in my family for many things.
Right.
So I can't speak for any other families, where some families were more fortunate earlier on and had access to information and opportunities and resources. And I look at the age range. I shared on my Facebook. At what age did you learn basic finances? And what age should it start? And there were some people who were fortunate to have parents and people in their lives to teach them at 8 years old.
Right.
And others were like myself. We were fully grown adults.
You can't be taught something that was never taught to the people who are raising.
Well, not even as deep as the financial and the literacy issues, but just it should be an innate thing for you to want to invest in your child and take the time to do your research about the schools and what's going on in the community, because now you have a child.
And I think people do the best that they can. I mean, I look at even with my parents, they were not wealthy parents. They didn't really educate us on finances. Right. We didn't have financial conversations at the dinner table. But I know my parents did the best they could.
And it's circumstantial. And it really is.
But where did that happen? Where did that get lost? Because if we
go
back,
it's a generational thing. I mean, there were some families who were fortunate to they could think about being set free. Let's go back to just kind of being set free, which is why reparations of 40 acres and a mule was a thing to begin with. You set slaves free who really didn't have much to begin with. Education was illegal. It was illegal to educate Black people in this country. And then you look at how some people had to go sneak words and sneak books.
Yeah, they were taking advantage of, for sure.
And they had to hide the fact that they were educated. There were people who've been hiding their education in this country for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so only being able to pass down that information in secrecy, in silence. And so there were people who were fortunate to receive some of this information where there was a masses of people who were not.
Right.
And you look at what was considered the talented 10th.
Yeah.
Some people are born this way, and then they're able to get access to information to advance the spectrum. But there's a large population in the middle who does not have access.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is where I
we
guess
gotta
the
go back
term
to
the
our
middle
roots.
class.
We used to educate ourselves. We
Yeah.
used to educate ourselves. We were the first teachers. You know, we taught the whole world, and now it's like we are against. Most of us are against homeschooling. I'm like, how are we against homeschooling?
We have to
retrain. It's so
We
one
have to.
we have to unlearn.
retrain.
Think about being programmed. It's like being hypnotized.
Yeah, for sure.
When you're programmed in this country to hate yourself, you're programmed in this country to be dumb, to stay dumb. You're programmed in this country that your life, your black doesn't matter. All these stigmas and forms of programming really, really has impacted us in ways that we don't even see the implications of it. And I call it to this day post-traumatic slave syndrome.
That's a good way to put it.
We're responding to a trauma, and we don't even realize how that trauma is impacting our everyday lives.
Right.
Everyday lives.
Right.
You know,
in our children's lives and our children's lives.
The NCAA.
And see, that's all I'm saying. We got to start thinking about that.
These conversations
and I
help
appreciate you guys
because it brings us to an awakening, right?
It.
But there are families who still don't want to brag about their children being physically able and talented.
Yeah.
Because then during slavery time, you know, your child being physically able could get him sold off to a new plantation.
He could get killed.
To get him
he
killed.
would get killed or sold off to
thing in
a
this
worse
spectrum. So
plantation,
there are people who still downplay the talents of people in their family for the fear that they don't even themselves realize why they have that fear.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
been embedded. It's perpetuated and it's passed down and it's projected.
For us to be here today, what we are free-ish.
Free-ish.
Yeah.
That's the way to put it.
Somewhat, but not really. You know.
And these kind of conversations are inspiring other people to have more conversations and to self-reflect and then to consider how do we move forward.
Well, you are a product of Ballou High School. Shout out to Ballou.
Shout out to Ballou. Bold, courageous, and outstanding. People did not want to go to Ballou Senior High School. They still can't believe I went there. They're looking at me like, you really?
You sure?
Did you really grow up in Southeast? If I could tell you, I would probably be rich. How many times I got that question? When people want to know, did you really grow up in Southeast?
I have two very important questions to ask you.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. One, do you like mumble sauce? And two, do you like go-go music?
Oh, are you kidding me?
We need to know.
This is not a real question.
We need to know.
I cannot believe. I'm not going to go back on the day that the mayor talked about go-go is not quintessential. Mumble sauce is not quintessential DC because that is false.
It is false.
I mean, listen, if you did not get salt, pepper, ketchup, mumble sauce as one word on
everything,
I don't know where you
pepper.
lived. I mean, we had growing up at Ballou. I mean, we had the carry out right there at the corner of 4th and MLK. I mean, that was our saving grace. Talk about sugar in your diet. I mean, now in moderation.
Yeah, for sure. Stop buying it, people. Stop buying it. Shout out to Don't Mute My Health too.
Get that craving.
But rest in peace to
everything in moderation.
One of the owners, the one of the co-owners actually passed away of the Capital City Capital Mumble Sauce, and so rest in peace to him. I have to check on his wife because it's been a while, but
send our condolences.
Go-Go. I grew up in Go-Go. We used to beat our feet on the corner of Congress Street and 14th. I mean, shout out to all my Congress Park family. I love y'all, man. We making it one person at a time.
Yeah.
Now I did have some rap. I grew up with Bone Thugs and Harmony. I grew up with Project Pat.
Yeah, that's when it hit the south side.
I was fortunate to have music with substance growing up. And I can't say that all the music today doesn't have substance. Like Rhapsody is killing the game.
Oh my gosh! Shout out to Rhapsody.
But times are definitely different though.
We have to put more consciousness back into our music. Even Go-Go then was about consciousness of our time, and a lot of music, if you really pay attention, it was talking about what we were going through,
right,
and how we raised above it. And so I'm challenging all of you guys out there, rap artists and music makers and the industry itself, to play those records.
Now Ward 8 has one of the lowest voter turnouts in DC. What do you think we need to do to get the people to the polls?
one of the things that we did, one of the things that Marion Barry was really good at was riding around your neighborhood with the loud horns and the loudspeaker system to get people out to vote.
Make you come out
Real
the house.
talk.
Yep.
And he somehow
Grassroots.
made it exciting to do. And so we tried to duplicate that. And I think people we talked about this earlier, a little disenfranchised with the political process and not feeling like it represents them.
Yeah.
And so the bigger challenge is
For good reason.
than not getting them out to vote is how do we get them to fully understand that this process, their voices matter in this process. Because oftentimes when you feel that you're not valued in the political process, where your vote does not matter, where who's going to get elected is going to get elected anyway, you tend to have us sit down. You tend to stand out. And so I'm just here to say that your vote matters, your voice matters. Every vote counts, and not just, from a very traditional perspective, but just kind of a living testament of, I lost one election by 15 votes.
Wow. Now come on, we got to get out and vote. You can't ever think that your vote doesn't matter. It has, especially on a local level.
I was going to say the local level is
we get so caught up in the
important.
presidential race that we forget about the local government.
Before you even get there, that's what's the most important. It's the people that you are electing to represent you, essentially, after the election happens.
Yes.
These are the people who now are serving as the face for you.
Yeah.
When it's time for somebody to stand up and have a conversation or to implement something.
Until it impacts their bottom line, whether it be the amount of money they pay for rent, whether it be the amount of money they're going to pay for, getting their transportation, whether it's their child care services, until it's really impacting and you can really fully see how it's impacting that bottom line, people are not engaged. So we're hoping to make greater connection with your bottom line, why this impacts your dollar, why this impacts your light bill, why this impacts your child care services, why this impacts your child's education, and making that plain connection between showing up to vote.
We need to relate more and have things resonate with us more.
That's
for
the
sure.
goal, is to resonate into the relatability.
I was just telling Nick earlier, I totally agree with that. People do think like that, but I don't, and I don't understand why people think like that. It's like, why I would rather help someone from another state tackle an issue that's affecting them, because even though it's indirectly affecting me right now, eventually it's going to affect me directly. So I would rather tackle it before it hits home.
Yeah.
I don't want to wait until it hits home. I'd rather help them out first. So, I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you think we should pay more attention to what's happening in the country as a whole and in DC as a whole, not just Ward 8 and not thinking about Ward 1, or Ward 1 not thinking about Ward 8? How do you feel about that?
Well, that's one of the things I have the privilege of doing as an at-large committee member, is really looking at national issues that impact us locally, and not being confined to the politics of one particular area, because it all is local.
Right.
When they pass marijuana laws in LA, we look at that and say, how do we duplicate that here? When they have voting rights policies, voting suppression policies in Atlanta and Florida, how do we make sure that doesn't happen here? So you're absolutely right. For those of us who have the capacity to do so, because it's also a capacity thing.
It is. You're right about that.
A lot of times, many people really cannot see past what's going to be on the dinner table tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that is a part of the reality that we are up against when we go to talk about these kind of more broad issues, is that what's going to be on the grocery dinner table? Do I have enough money to get my supplies for my home? Can I get the kids to school?
Yeah.
Right.
So these are just kind of the mindset that many of us are in, which is the responsible thing to do. And beyond that, it is really difficult to consume much more.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
It's our time to stand up. And I think that sometimes every generation gets a little bit younger with the people who can stand up. But we definitely have to pass the baton quicker. Now that we know better, we can teach better.
Yes, we have to do that. And to learn more about Sharece Crawford and her initiatives and missions in DC, please share one more time all of your social media handles and any numbers that you have that you want to
Yeah. So definitely stay in communication. I mean, we have education policy a group. We have a health and housing policy group. We have a mental health group, a health policy group. Don't Mute My Health. Obviously, they're separate, but you can stay connected with us at Crawford at Large, CRAWFORD at Large on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're there.
Wonderful. And Nick Stokes, please give him your social media handle one more time.
It's _ gypsy eyes _ That's on Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook at Nick Stokes.
Yes, yes.
Excellent.
And we leave every show on a positive note. Today we're going to keep it short and cute one more time. Environmental cleanliness
Wash your hands.
begins with an individual desire to be clean, people. An individual desire to be clean. So please wash your hands.
All my life I had to wash my hands.
Yes.
And cover your mouth.
And make sure to keep up with True Culture by subscribing to Human Nature TV on YouTube for news, reviews, and exclusive interviews and more. That's HUEman Nature TV on YouTube. For professional recording and podcasting studio space, contact Playground Studios, located right here in the heart of DC. Check out innerflydom.com. That's INNERFLYDOM.com, home of the If Bear. Make sure to follow the good people over at Behind the Facade Clothiers on Instagram at BTF Clothiers for exclusive apparel and mental health assistance. The revolution may not be televised, but it will be broadcasted. True Culture on Human Nature TV.
Peace and love.